365, we making a place. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace up the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays. Net.
And welcome to the latest episode of Real Talk. I am one of the hosts here, Mr. Bond Chronicles, and I'm blessed to be here with my newly married brother and Kenny. What's going on, man?
Hey, man. Always good to talk. Always good to be on with you, and always good to talk some sports.
Absolutely. So we will get into it. And we got to start with what's going on. Currently in the NBA, we have the play-ins coming in. Up there, I believe they start tomorrow and Wednesday, and then the winner of those two games plays on Thursday. So kind of with what you're looking at, and I don't know if you have it pulled up in front of you what the schedule is.
I do.
Okay, perfect. So who do you got getting out of the East, and who you got coming out of the West in the 7 and 8 seed?
So I have Brooklyn winning versus Cleveland, and then I have Minnesota winning versus LA. I just think with Brooklyn, well, I think it's more so with Cleveland, I should say. I think Cleveland has really struggled down the stretch, and they're kind of limping into the playoffs. And I just can't see any way KD and Kyrie losing a home game to Cleveland. As much as I like Cleveland, I just think they kind of hit the wall. We kind of talked about this over the second half of the season, that they kind of hit a wall here. And so I just think that between that and this being their first time being in the playoffs in I don't know how many years, I think this is the end of the road for them. But having said that, they still had a very successful season, and I really like that. I like their prospects going forward because they have a really nice young core of players. So I just think Brooklyn's experience and talent is just going to be too much for them, and also at home. I just think that's going to be too big of a challenge for them. And then the second game, I got Minnesota. I just think that Karl-Anthony Towns has been on a tear. Like, he's really trying to make a statement this year that he's one of the elite big men, and everybody's been talking about Joker and Embiid for the MVP, but a lot of people have forgotten about what Karl-Anthony Towns did over the second half of the season. He has really been dominant. So I just think that they're going to, I think they're going to pull that out against the Clippers. And I would, as much as I would like to see the Clippers advance and maybe go into the playoffs, because there's a chance they say that Kawhi Leonard could be back if they're able to get into that first round. I just don't think that they have enough firepower, and I think they're also a team that's banged up as well. So I just think that Minnesota's going to wind up pulling that one out. And then the funny thing is I'm actually picking all of the home teams. So I got Atlanta against Charlotte, and I got New Orleans versus San Antonio. And San Antonio kind of for the same reason, that they're young, and I just think they're happy to be there. You know what I'm saying? So, and I just think Charlotte just doesn't play enough defense. Although I'm going to be locked in, I can't wait to see Trae Young and LaMelo Ball go at it. I just think that's going to be a showdown for the ages. So I'm really excited about seeing that matchup. But I just think that Atlanta's experience gets them over the hump, and I just think that San Antonio's inexperience is going to be their downfall. So I got all the home teams in the playing games.
Okay. For the sake of time, I'm not going to run through all of them. I agree. It's hard to pick. I think the team I would have the most concern about is the Timberwolves, just because the Clippers are just battle tested. And
they are.
The way Ty Lue has them boys playing, you never know doesn't matter how much you get up or anything like that. Like, they are liable to come back. And then when I look at a team that, is younger, hasn't really been there. Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell's hit some big shots in his career for sure, but that's a big game, a pressure game at home. So I would lean Clippers there.
I'm not mad at that. I can see that.
Especially with Paul George being back. He's been playing pretty well.
He has.
In a one-game series, I think Reggie Jackson can go off. I just think
Yeah.
the Clippers can do that. I want to pick the Hornets. They looked really good at times down the stretch, and then there was a couple games they just I don't know what happened. The same can be said of Atlanta at times, but no, I would agree with the Atlanta. And I agree with you. I think the Pelicans aren't much more of a veteran team, but I just think they are a little better right now. I think the Pelicans' better players are better than the Spurs' better players.
Right.
So if I got to take Ingram and McCollum versus, say, Murray and Johnson, I got to take Ingram and McCollum. So hopefully it'll be good. Popovich will definitely have them ready, but should be good. From there, we would get what? Nets Hawks.
No. Oh yeah.
And then I would have Clippers Pelicans for 7 and 8, and I think the Clippers.
Hold on, I'm sorry. So the loser gets the 8th, winner gets the 7th seed. Is that how that goes?
I thought it was 2 games. So the winner of the 7-8 game gets the 7 seed, and then the winner of the 9-10 game plays the I guess and that whoever that loser is. And then the 7-8 loser
gotcha.
versus the 9-10 winner would play for the 8 seed.
Gotcha. Okay. I just wasn't sure how that worked. So if the Nets win, then they get the 7th seed.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So definitely some big ramifications there. Should be exciting, man. We're gonna get some intense playoff basketball going. So we will definitely have to recap that when it comes through and see what the new lineups are and everything like that. But the other big news to come out today, that was apparently news to Frank Vogel because last night he had no idea.
Not buying that.
What was potentially coming. Seemed a little upset about the question in his response. But the Lakers have decided to move on from Frank Vogel. And so my question for you, just high level, is: was it a Frank Vogel problem? Did he deserve to be fired? And if so, who do you think should take his place?
Man, I don't know that he necessarily deserved to be fired. I think that there's more problems with the Lakers than just Frank Vogel. I think that he's being made the scapegoat for all of these, for all of the Lakers' problems, and because like you said, we've been talking about this. The man just won the championship 2 years ago, so he goes from winning the champ, and they made the playoffs last year, even though it was the play-in. So to fire him off of one bad season, I think was totally. I just think he just got a raw deal because, like I said, there's way more problems with the Lakers than Frank Vogel. The way that roster was constructed was flawed. Clearly, the pieces didn't fit. They didn't have the right mix of talent. They didn't have the right mix of chemistry, and all of those things speak to the front office more so than the coach. But of course, it's always easier to fire a coach than it is to either get rid of players or to fire a GM. So I say all that to say, no, I don't think he should have gotten fired, but now that he has gotten fired, I think you have to bring in somebody that has some serious credentials or has a serious resume that the players will respect, because you got to have somebody that's going to be able to manage those egos, because you got 3 big stars that you're going to have to deal with between, AD, LeBron, and Russ. So, of course, I'll always champion Mark Jackson because I think he got a raw deal in Golden State and he hasn't gotten another opportunity. So I think he would be a good fit. I've heard some other names. I'm not sure about Jawan Howard as much as I love him, as a player and as a coach. He definitely would get the respect of the players, I think. But I just think that on the experience side, I think you need somebody that's a little more experienced to take over this roster. Because, like I said, you got these big personalities and you got these big egos, and you got guys that's been in the league for a long time. So I really think you have to get somebody, that has a really, a lengthy resume that's established, that has some championship pedigree. And I think unfortunately the problem is that they probably they let the wrong coach walk out the door, because we see what Jason Kidd has done in Dallas. So that probably would have been the best for the job, because I don't think that, because we were talking about and his name just escaped me. That was the Knicks' former coach, and it was in Memphis. Fizdale. I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's the answer either. So, and definitely not Shaq. That ain't the answer either, Damian. You got to get almost got to get like a guy like a Greg Popovich. You got to get a guy like with an extensive resume, which is not going to happen because he's not leaving San Antonio. But I'm saying you got to get that type of guy. You get like a Steve Kerr, that type of a guy that has that type of established resume that they would have to listen to, or a Phil Jackson, that type. Although I wouldn't recommend that either. But I'm just saying that type of guy you have to get in, that's going to come in and automatically, once he walks into the door, he's going to demand respect. And they're not going to, be able to, because it was clear, like you could tell that they had tuned him out. They had tuned him out, and his voice just lost any weight in that locker room. So once that happens, so this is just a matter of time. And they had, I think they kind of had to. But like, having said all of that, I think you have to look at the other issues, because just getting another coach is not going to fix the other problems that they have. You got to look at Rob Pelinka. Is he the right guy to lead this franchise? You got all these other people that's having to say so. This is like, I heard today that Kurt Rambis was in coaches meetings. Like, what are we doing? Like, what has he done why does he have so much influence in this organization? Just because you're best friends with the owner? Like, how does that give you that much, that much weight in the organization? And I saw a report today that they wanted to fire him in January, but Linda Rambis said that he needs to stick it out and finish this season out. Like, what are we doing? I don't understand. Like Jeannie Buss, she just got too many voices in the air, and she's gonna have to really make some tough decisions. She did it before when she fired her brother, but she's gonna have to make some tough decisions in this offseason, because bringing in another coach is not going to fix all of their problems. You got way more problems besides just the coach.
No, I agree with a lot of that. I obviously think Shaq would be a terrible option to coach. I think the part that was really interesting to me in the report is, one, they let the article or get it to Woj or whatever to leak it early. But the bigger issue is they want to coach by the draft, which is a pretty quick turnaround. In relation to, you won't necessarily have an idea of what the roster is going to look like. So you don't know what kind of coach to bring in, because you're not going to have the majority of this roster back. So I think any coach that comes in is going to be in a tough spot, because if he comes in with a certain system and they let a couple of those pieces go, like, you could be coaching a completely different team, maybe with no superstars at all. But at the end of the day, I think they have to do something. And it's always easy. You could blame Russ, but it's going to be hard to move Russ's deal and contract. I think what we see with Jeannie, and I don't know the relationship she had with her brother, but it seems like the people Jeannie likes, she listens to, and she keeps around.
Exactly.
I don't know if maybe for her.
I don't think that's part of the problem.
I mean, I agree with you. The Rambises, and from what the different reports, we're hearing more and more of how involved he was, which we've heard that before, but that most good coaches aren't going to want to come into that situation in either. So I think they definitely have some things to figure out. I've said it on this show and others. I don't think Rob Pelinka is the problem. I think Rob Pelinka was similar to Frank Vogel, and we don't know how much power he really had. Like, could he really push back or say some things if, the bus Genie or the Rambises told him to do it? So he's trying to keep his job as well. So I definitely think it's showing even a greater light of the dysfunction within the franchise, which is really disappointing. That's just, like I said, not ideal, but we'll see what happens. We got a long offseason to go, but given, the time frame in which they're looking to make a decision and a potential roster and front office situation, How would you rate the Lakers' job as a destination? So if you are Mark Jackson, is this where you want to come back and try and, make your name or clear your name or anything like that? If you're a young, up-and-coming coach, is this the kind of situation that you would want to find yourself in?
I think if you're an up-and-coming coach, then you kind of have to take this opportunity because they don't come along very often. I don't. Well, let me ask you your first question. I think rating this job, I don't know how high it is, to be honest with you, because while you have stars, they're aging stars. Two of them are aging stars. And the other one is injury prone. So I don't know how high you can rate this job. Like, if you're comparing this, let's say to, for example, the Lakers and Memphis, like there's no comparison which one you would take. Even if the Lakers and the Spurs, like I would take that job before I would take the Lakers job. So there's a few jobs out here that are probably more attractive than the Lakers. I think it's still up there just because of the cachet and because of just what the brand represents. So it's still up there. But I think in terms of the value of the roster, I think that's what comes into question because you got a whole lot of questions. Then, like you said, you got basically half the roster that's going to be turned over, at the end of this season because you got so many guys on 1-year deals. So, like you said, what are you coming into? And the fact of the matter, like another great point that you made is them trying to hire somebody before the draft. I think that's foolish because if the rules are the same like they are with the NFL, then the candidates that they're talking about, if they're in the playoffs, they can't talk to them. So, like, you're limiting your candidate pool. So I just think that, like, this thing is already off to a flawed start. So while while the job may have some attraction to it, I don't think it's, has the same attraction that it used to because the Lakers are starting to look, they're looking like a really dysfunctional franchise. And I was talking with a friend on Facebook today, and I said, like, I'm a Knicks fan, and I didn't think anybody could surpass the level of dysfunction that the Knicks had, and I think the Lakers have, and it's crazy to say. So I don't really know how attractive this job is, to be honest with you.
No, I definitely agree. I think the lack of the unknown, and if I'm a coach trying to come in, you would want some kind of assurances that this is our plan, this is what's been agreed to, this is our plan to deal with the Westbrook situation. I feel like nobody's really been able to coach Russ. So unless you bring in someone like Scotty Brooks, and I didn't even like that dynamic because that helped create the Russ that you see today. So if you thought you didn't like Russ last year in the way he played, you think with Scotty Brooks he's all of a sudden going to play less like right. And as more and more reports come out of his role this season, like he was pretty outspoken on some things. So I don't know what happens there. I don't think that's the best answer. I don't think Coach K would sniff this job in a million.
Yeah, nah, no way.
He wouldn't leave great.
Not a chance.
For this trash job.
Yeah, not a chance.
So
if he didn't leave when Kobe was alive, there's no way he's leaving now.
And not for this LeBron. I just think that whole thing is dead. Maybe he didn't want to do just recruiting, but dealing with all those personalities, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So no, I did. You did mention him, and you kind of skipped over him, but I think more so than having an older veteran coach, assuming they bring back the core of Russ, Bron, and AD, I think you need someone that they respect. And by all accounts, you've gotten a lot of reports and things that Jawan Howard is well respected. Mm-hmm. So I think because of his role, and he was on the Miami Heat team, he knows Bron. He can speak to him about things. I think he, especially even coming off the run they just had, like I think that would make the most sense because I think it is someone that they have to respect, but you can't have somebody laying down to everything. And he seems, if that end of that one game is any indication, like he's willing to stand up if he feels disrespected. So I think that's the best case scenario, but I think he's really happy where he is. and I don't know if he wants that headache.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I would be surprised, to be honest with you, because like you said, I think that Michigan was his dream job. So I don't know if he leaves that to come to this dysfunction. You know what I'm saying? And then, Conman, you make a great point. Like, they're gonna have to. So, are you going to make whoever you hire? Are you going to dictate to them who their assistants are going to be as well? That's not going to work. That's why you lost the two candidates that you had prior to hiring Vogel. So, like, they're gonna have to change some other things, because the way they're doing business now, it's not going to work. Like, it's a recipe for disaster. They got lucky, in terms of getting this championship that they got, to be honest. So, like, everything kind of broke in their favor, because if had the season continued the way, when it was, then who knows if AD would have even been available, because he was hurt at the time. So,
right.
Like, they were fortunate to get the championship that they got, but the way this roster is constructed, and with all of the turnover that's going to happen in this offseason, like, this team is definitely not. It's not a contender, and you have to be in win now mode, because those guys want to win. Like Russ, LeBron, AD, they want to win now. So you're going to have to build that roster, and they make a whole bunch of money. So you're not going to have a lot of cap space to build the rest of the roster. So you're going to have to get these minimum guys on these short-term deals, and we've seen how that's worked out.
Yeah, hasn't been working for them. And then again, you're adding an extra year to LeBron's age as well. So I do think they're going to do everything they can to make sure he's happy, because I think they want to see the record broken in that jersey. So I think that scoring record could also play a role. And I don't think he's the greatest leader, but he tends to be a relatively decent recruiter in getting whoever he wants to be around him. So I feel like they'll figure out a way to get out from under Russ. I really, really, really hope that John Wall gets a chance to play, because the stuff I keep seeing on the internet, and we have a topic in relation to that, I just don't enjoy. But we'll see, kind of what they end up doing. But overall, we got to get to award season. So it is a regular season award. So anybody in the comments or listening, these are based on the regular season. Nothing else outside of that. So, Kenny, who do you currently have as your MVP?
Oh, man, I've been going back and forth on this. And, of course, you got the three suspects, I guess you could say. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. Well, I guess four. Giannis, D-Book, and the big guys, Joker and Embiid. And I think it's between the two big fellas. I have been saying I think I had Joker. I think I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with the Joker, just because of all of the things that he does for that team. Because how much the offense runs through him, how versatile he is offensively, while he doesn't contribute the same thing on the defensive end that Embiid does. I just think that between that and the fact that he's had to play this year without two of his starters, and I think they won one more game than they won last year or something like that. The fact that he was able to do that, to me, that gets the nod for me. As much as I like Embiid, and I think he had a great year, I think the Joker also played more games than he did as well. So I got the Joker for MVP.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's a common thought. Everybody played without people. Now, yes, Michael Porter Jr., I think maybe played 7 games or something like that. Jamal Murray was out all year. But as much as those two players being down hurts, it also allowed them to have a pretty consistent rotation that a lot of the other players didn't have to deal with. He never had to make that adjustment to James Harden showing up or Kyrie Irving coming back or some of these other situations, Chris Paul being in, then being out. Chris Middleton has missed some time. Drew Holiday has missed some time. They were active around the trade deadline, getting Serge Ibaka installed in Milwaukee. They even had Boogie Cousins at one point earlier this year.
They did.
I will say that was a slight adjustment, but I think that's been great for Joker. Is Cousins playing in Denver? He's playing smart. He's staying out of foul trouble. He's really playing his role. So I think as much as it's a benefit he won without people, other people had to win without others, and they all won at a higher clip. Like Devin Booker set a franchise record, and his numbers are pretty comparable when you look at him across the board. I don't know how he's not a slam dunk MVP. Like, this is par for the course for Joker. Like, his numbers aren't exponentially up from last year. It was one extra win, maybe a half a point here or there, but I think we're glamorizing what Joker does, similar to what we used to do with Russell Westbrook. When he was getting all those triple doubles, and it was just fantastic to see this one guy on a team without anybody doing great things, getting them into a similar playoff seed, we got enamored with it. And then we saw and although Russ did decline, as we saw him in other situations, we realized maybe it wasn't that great. I think people today are looking back at those seasons a little different than they were when you first did it. And I think what Joker's doing is great, but I don't see anything extraordinary. And that's why I believe they're in the 6th seed versus even Luka having Dallas with limited to no help and dealing with Porzingis being out has them in the 4 seed. So for me, it would be Devin Booker, amount of wins, his efficiency, what he did and that team did when Chris Paul went out. He's my MVP.
No, that's fair. I think the biggest part of it is the fact that, when Chris Paul went out, the way they were able to maintain and even create, further distance. So that really does make, strengthen his case. So I get it.
Yeah. But we will see. That's usually announced before game 1 of the finals, I believe. Or was it after the season?
It's sometime during the playoffs. I think maybe, yeah, you could be. I think it may be like right after the first round, something like that.
Okay. So the next category we'll get into is Defensive Player of the Year. We've had a number of people campaigning for it on the internet and things like that. But in your opinion, who would you say is this year's Defensive Player of the Year?
I think it's probably between 3 guys. I think Draymond missed too many games to be in consideration. So I would say between Mikal Bridges in Phoenix and Rudy Gobert in Utah, and then Bam Adebayo in Miami would be my 3 candidates. And I think I'm giving it to Mikal Bridges because just how consistent he was throughout the season, and then also how they as a team, how well they played defensively, and he was the linchpin of that defensive unit. So I think for that reason, and because, again, and to your point, in terms of how they put distance between themselves and the rest of the West, I think you got to give it to him.
So I do agree with you. The only other name that really I think it's gotten some more attention, but maybe hasn't got enough attention is Marcus Smart. And he was a huge part of that resurgence that they went on. Because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they've statistically been pretty similar. But his impact and imprint on that team and all the charges that he takes and the just energy he plays with was huge in their turnaround. And offensively, he'll hit a couple shots here and there, but that would be the only other person that I would give credit to because it was a huge difference. His impact I felt tangible on how they played. But the other thing is Bridges often is going against the best wing player and does a really good job. One thing I can say is whether it's Katie or Giannis, neither one of them did a great job stopping the other at key moments. and Bridges has done that. So he's going to definitely have to earn his stripes here in the playoffs because he's going to have some great wings they're running into.
Oh, yeah.
But he definitely, I would say, gets the nod for me.
Right. Another guy we should mention also is Drew Holiday. He's another guy that's really a great defender that doesn't get the credit that he deserves sometimes.
I will agree with you on that. Next is we're going to go Coach of the Year. So I know we've talked about this a couple different times here. Now that the season is over, now that the records are solidified, now that the seeding is taken care of, who you got for Coach of the Year?
I think it's a toss-up between Monty Williams and Taylor Jenkins. I think those two guys have the strongest case. I think you can also make a case for Jason Kidd and for Ime Udoka. But I think those are the top two guys. And I don't know, man. This might be – I don't know if we've ever had a co-coach of the year, but to me, this would be the one year that you could, because I honestly can't pick between Jenkins and Monty Williams, because you could make a strong case for either one of them. Both of them had, their point guards out that were considered to be their best player out for, a lot of the season, as well as Memphis dealt with some other injuries as well with Dylan Brooks and Jared Jackson was in and out of the lineup as well. So I can make a case for both of those guys, and I really can't pick one over the other. So I'm just going to tap out and say I'm giving it co-coach of the year to Jenkins and to Monty Williams.
Shame.
I can't pick one because I make a case for either one. I can make a strong case for either one. So I can't pick one over the other. I really can't.
How can you not? There has to be a tiebreaker here.
So what is it? Who are you picking?
You know I'm all about the wins, man. I'm about breaking records, man. And Phoenix coming off. Here's what people I don't think give enough credit for. They came off a really tough end to their season. And they could have hung their heads. But they didn't hang their heads. They got on that horse and they rode it all the way through the season. Really probably been easily the most consistent team all year. That means something. It's nice when you can come from nowhere like Memphis has done and overachieve.
Exactly.
But that's a luxury when they're not preparing for it and you can sneak up on them a couple times. Now, they're a good team. I know we got some people
after a certain amount of time, you're not sneaking up on teams anymore, though.
I agree. But then we realized they are good. I think they're a solid, well-constructed, gritty team that plays good team ball, and I give Taylor the credit. But they still was 8 games worse than Phoenix.
Like, you won 56 games.
I hear you.
That ain't shabby,
And sometimes you have that. Sometimes you have a guy average a triple-double for the year, and you might have been the best player in the best team, but when records are broken after coming off that kind of year and having you mentioned one of the best players in your team out and having your center in a contract year, having potential contract issues, and you just gave a couple people some money, and you got to balance all of that and come back and clear the next best team in the whole league by 8 games? Come on, man.
I'm saying you're going from the 9th seed to the 2nd seed. I think that's as equally as impressive.
I mean, but you got to also factor in the Lakers fell off. The Clippers weren't there. It wasn't the same West.
But that wasn't. But that's not on them. That they still did what they needed to do.
We agree, but the standard,
we said the East is deeper than the West. So, and I think they had a heck of a record against the East, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, they had to. They had a heck of a record for the year, but
right.
I gotta reward the record-breaking year.
I get it.
Gotta give that credit where it's due. But we have the Brooklyn Nets in the play-in tournament. I don't think if you would have taken or asked someone to take that bet to start the year, they would have took that bet.
No doubt.
But here we are with the last week of the season, the Nets having to play their tails off just to get into the play-in game that they're even in. So we have that. We got Luka, we got Ja, we got Chris Paul, we got Giannis, we got Embiid, Harden. A lot of names in the playoffs. Who's under the most pressure to get it done this year?
I think Chris Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Chris Paul. I think it's between Chris Paul and James Harden. I think those are the two guys that have the most pressure on them. But I think Chris Paul has the most pressure because, you already said they've, set records. They already, they come on off a finals loss, and then they turned around and basically just pulled away from the pack and has been the best team in the league all season from start to finish. So I think they have to finish the deal. Like there's no, everybody's healthy. So we're not, we don't have that as an issue going into the playoffs. So I think the pressure is really on Chris. And it's also, just because of how long Chris Paul has been in the league, and there's always been the questions about whether or not he can lead his team to a championship. So I think that's the most pressure is on him. And then right behind him is James Harden because, he forced his way out of Brooklyn after forcing his way out of Houston. And now he's, in Philly. And, everybody basically said that this duo was going to be the next Shaq and Kobe or the next most dominant duo that we've ever seen in the league. And, this, that, and the third. And I think that they're under pressure as well because, people are talking about, whether Doc's job is going to be on the line, if they collapse again in the playoffs. So I think that's the other guy that's under the most pressure. But I think that Chris Paul is the one that is number one with James Harden right behind him.
I definitely think those people are at the top of that list. I think for me, I think more pressure is on James Harden. And the only reason I say that is I believe that Phoenix team is young enough, people are paid enough, people understand their roles enough that even if this year they didn't get it done, I think they'd be the favorite potentially coming back next year. I feel like if Philly doesn't win this year, next year is going to be a disaster. Unless Harden re-signs and opts in, that's going to be Ben Simmons all over again leading up until probably the All-Star break. You also have Embiid playing at his best and his healthiest. You don't know how quickly or how long that will go. So I think this is the year. You made the trades this year. You mortgaged the future this year when you potentially could have waited to the summer to get James Harden. I think it's on James Harden, especially when the people they're going to be playing against are at that same level. And so, like that first game that Kyrie played, when it was glaring the difference, you don't want that. Mm-hmm. Or there won't be a team you can force yourself to where you're not going to have to answer those questions. I think Chris Paul coming back late towards the end of the year, as well as I think the window's much wider for Phoenix, I think gives him slightly less pressure, but he better not get hurt in the playoffs, I'll tell you that. If he get hurt in the playoffs after getting the second half of the season off to rest and make sure he was in peak condition, I think he's going to have a hard summer. But I'm going Harden with most pressure.
So let me ask you this question. Do you said that even if Phoenix doesn't win next year, they still will be able to contend next year. Do you think that Chris Paul could still play at this high of a level next season?
I think so, mainly because of his style of play. Like if he was old Derrick Rose, if he was DeJounte Murray, if he was De'Aaron Fox, and one of those kind of up-tempo, fast-paced point guards, yes, I think we would be running into a problem. But he's a lot more Rondo, traditional, pats the ball, gets the team into the right set. So I think that type of basketball can play. The issue I think he would take is he'd have to make more business decisions on the defensive end. He might not be able to, guard in the post as much or take some of those hits as much or running, chasing people around screens and things like that. But I think outside of that, his style of play is sustainable, not just with that team, but even with the roster as it's currently constructed. He may take a lesser role because I think campaign showed them a lot, but he would still be Chris Paul.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that his skill level is is the type of skill level that can, that he could play later into his career because, like you said, he doesn't play above the rim. He's so cerebral and so his high IQ is so high that I do think that he could still maintain a relatively high level of play.
Absolutely.
And Con, man, you gotta let me know when you get those guys on because I definitely got to be on that show.
Yes, indeed. So speaking of people, I guess that have had all the pressure really relieved at this point, reports are starting to bubble up that Ben Simmons will make a return in the first round. Are you calling BS, or you think there's a chance we actually see Ben Simmons this year?
No, I think he will be on the court. Like I saw some clips of him. He was working out. Now, mind you, he wasn't. He wasn't going. 100%. Looked like he was kind of. Going kind of light. Didn't look like he was. Wasn't definitely not full speed or anything like that. But the fact that he's on the court and shooting jump shots, like the fact that you're jumping and landing, that says that you're not in pain, that your back is not bothering you. You know what I mean? So I do think that we will see him at some point, but how effective he is, that's a whole nother question. That's a whole nother issue because this guy hasn't played all year. Like you haven't. You're pretty much almost. This is what 10 months since the last time you played, and that's a lot of rush to try to knock off and then try to knock off while playing in the playoffs. So if he does play, I just think it'll be a limited role. So I don't know how much he would even contribute. Maybe we're talking 10 or 15 minutes. So how much could he even contribute in that? In those type of limited minutes. But we will see him though. I think we will see him. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, I think that is the point. If we do see him, what can he give you? Are you sticking him as coming in as like a defensive specialist to maybe stop a Giannis run or a DeRozan run or somebody like that? Or are we expecting him to play meaningful minutes at the end of a game? So that's a heck of a cog to try and put into the system at this point when they've been playing on the fly most all year. But he's a heck of a talent. So
right.
You got to definitely, if he's ready, making that money and with what he could provide, I think you got to try and fit him in. So money shout outs to Steve Kerr for figuring that out on the fly. I'm not sorry, Steve Kerr, Steve Nash, figuring that out on the fly. But we'll see. We will see. We are by, I think the playoffs will start Friday, I believe.
Oh, the first round?
Yeah.
Something like that. I know that we got the play-ins that start tomorrow, so either Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, so they better, I guess, be game planning for both, and they probably know more than we do as well. So that could also play a factor in how healthy they expect him to be in planning for that. But speaking of
Saturday,
Saturday, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But speaking of success and team success and impacting success, this year we saw obviously a ton of really good guard play in the West. Specifically, Steph Curry had an amazing run at one point in the season, really up until he got close to the record, and then after that it was a struggle. And then we also saw Ja Morant, but quiet as it's kept, Ja Morant has missed a lot of games this year and starting to accumulate them in his young career. But given what we saw from the two different teams and kind of how they went in opposite directions throughout the year, who would you say is more valuable to their team? Would you say Steph to Golden State or Ja to Memphis?
I think Steph to Golden State because Golden State really struggled down the stretch once he went down. And, like you said, Ja had been out for so long or has missed so many games, almost to the point to where they were, people were asking questions or whether they were better without him because of the record that they were like something like 16-2 or 18-2 or some crazy some crazy good record without him in the lineup. So people starting to ask those questions, and we saw that Golden State they were a 2 seed for most for most of the season before Steph went down, and then they kind of were limping into the playoffs, and they were they did manage to keep that keep the 3 seed, but it was questions because Dallas was right on their heels. So we wasn't sure whether or not they were going to hold on to that. So I think for that reason, I think Steph is more valuable. Also because of what for what he does in terms of spacing the floor for those guys, because you got to, stay so connected to him because of his shooting range. I think he just makes the game so that much easier for the other guys because of the floor spacing that he creates. So I think for that reason, and that's no slight to Ja, because Ja is a tremendous player, and what he does on the offensive end in terms of his driving and his dishing and his penetration and making it happen for Memphis, he does make the game easier for those guys as well. But I just think that Steph, because of, and also the ability that he has to just turn the game on its head with his shooting, I think for that reason is why Steph is more valuable than Ja.
So I tend to agree with you on that, and I think they're actually in similar roles because if you take away their shooting guards, that can make their lives significantly more difficult. I've seen Clay have some nights, and when Desmond Bane was down, he was way down, and neither of them is going to stop shooting if they're down.
Right.
But I do think Steph's ability to shoot the three at a higher level does give him a little bit of an advantage just because Ja's points, although he can accumulate them, typically they're 2-pointers, which take more time, effort, and energy, whereas Steph gets going and the game can get out of hand in a matter of minutes. He hasn't been shooting up really to that standard, but he's still Steph, and you give him, he get going, especially with them they'll have home court up until I think the conference finals, depending on who they play. Like it's not Oracle, but it's still. And I think that would be would this be their first playoff games in that building?
Yes.
They did what last year, and they didn't make it last year.
Yeah, because they got knocked out. Well, wait, no, this would be their second playoff because they did play. Memphis went there and beat them.
But that was in a play-in, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, playoff.
Yeah, well, I guess I count that as playoffs. So.
Okay. So no, for that reason, I would not lean Steph. But if Bane's off, Ja better get his game together because he's gonna have to score a bunch of points.
Yeah, he's super streaky
and overcome that. So I saw a meme earlier today, or graphic, I don't know what you call it, and it was a John Wall diss in relation to him and Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk retiring in 2019, and John Wall got his new deal. I think it was 2017. And even though Dirk retired in 2019, he's played more games than John Wall. So John Wall has continued to be the butt of jokes and just someone that is just left for dead, seemingly, under no fault of his own. So I actually have a new question that is kind of birthed from that. Why do you feel people view John Wall that way versus someone like Gordon Hayward, who also hasn't been very healthy, and for the amount of money he's getting paid in his role, you could say they're not really getting what they should be getting out of him from a money standpoint. So why do you think the perception is so different?
Oh, I think because Wall was a healthy scratch. I think that he had the ability to play this season, but they chose to sit him, or mutual decision, whatever the case was. I think that's why. And I saw the same meme. Actually, I saw another meme that was even worse too. Like since gotten his money, like how many games he's played in this 2 season where he hasn't played any games. So it's just like, man, I feel bad for him, because uh, he had it, and as a Washington guy, he had a stretch there of about maybe 5 or 6 years where he played at an extremely high level. Like he was one of the top point guards in the NBA before he had injury issues. So I think that, but yeah, just because he was a healthy scratch this year, I think that's why he gets so much, catches so much flack. But to me, Chandler Parsons is bigger than both of those guys. I don't think anybody's stolen more money than Chandler Parsons.
Okay, well, that actually is the next question I was going to have is of those three, who do you think is the bigger thief? And I agree with you. Like what Chandler Parsons was able to do and how he got that absurd deal.
Ultimate finesse.
Like I don't know who his agent was at the time, but he deserved a raise.
Oh my gosh.
Because
he's the GOAT.
That wasn't as bad as the Gilbert deal, which turned out to be a pretty bad deal. But
he didn't even play a game. Like once he got that $100 million, he didn't even play a game.
Walked away, basically. Living a great life. So how he managed to do that, the world may never know. But that is what happened. It only takes one team. They talk about that all the time.
All the time.
So over the weekend, we had I'll say a historic moment. A man that could have died a little over a year ago, could have lost his leg a little over a year ago, performed in the Masters, and not just performed at the Masters, made the cut. Played really well for 2 rounds. You could tell probably a round and a half in, it didn't look like he was probably going to make it. And ultimately he didn't. But just your takeaway, I don't know how much of a golf fan you are, but given the story and where we ended up this weekend, what were your thoughts on the Masters and Tigers weekend?
Well, I am a golf fan. I am a golfer. I'm not very good, but I am a golfer. I just think that this is the ultimate. This just showed how mentally tough Tiger Woods is, and we've always marveled at his mental toughness, but like this has taken it up just another notch. Like to me, because you could even see in the first round, you could see that he was starting to limp in the first round.
Yeah.
So you could see he was already struggling with it, and the fact that he was, just able to grit it out and do 4 rounds, like to me, like that just speaks to how mentally tough he is, and just how great a person, how great a talent he is. Because, like you said, he's overcome so much. I mean, 5 back surgeries, almost losing your leg, knee surgeries. The whole 9, like his body has been through hell and back. And the fact that he was able to do that and complete 4 rounds where, on a course that they say is considered to be the most grueling in terms of the walking, I guess the longest course that you have to walk, the fact that he was able to do that, I just salute him, and I just give him the utmost respect because, like I said, I'm a golfer, but I don't walk nobody's golf course. I ride around in the golf cart. So, the fact that he was able to do that, I just think I can't say enough about how mentally tough he was.
I 100% agree. I think I imagine it has to be difficult being some of the golfers this weekend, being Scheffler, being McIlroy, being some of the others. Mm-hmm. It's like this guy just came up from the dead, basically. And now nobody cares anything about us. I was watching the crowds like on the final day, and Scheffler better be lucky that Tiger wasn't in more of a hunt, because if they wouldn't have been in the same group, he wouldn't have had nobody following his historic run. And he's been balling, quote unquote, the last like month and a half. So he's been super hot, but people just didn't care.
Yeah.
And I think that was just a reminder to what he did, that this many years later, this many years from his quote unquote fall from grace, not just off the course, but on it as well. He's just hasn't been the same guy. Like, it's just a testament to who he was. And so it was good to see that. Glad that, he's kind of changed his approach post situation with his, I guess, engagement with the fans and the moments. So it's really great to see. But it's just another reminder that golf still needs a guy, because when he comes back, that's where everybody goes. But overall, I was really happy. Hopefully he continues. Hopefully there were no, potential more damage done or anything like that. And we'll get to see him a little bit more. It's getting nice out, and, he'll definitely bring the crowds out.
Yeah. I think he said that he's definitely playing the British Open, but he wouldn't commit to anything, after that. But I will say, one other thing real quick, like, I live in Florida, and so I live where the Players Championship is. That's not too far from where I live. So I actually went one year just to see him play. And when I tell you the galleries, like I tried to watch him on 18, and the closest that I could get was like in the fairway. It was people everywhere. Like, it was no place to stand. Like, you could, it's just. And that's just the effect that he has. To your point, man, is just that he just captivates any tournament that he's in. And Tiger Mania, I don't think that, that'll be here from now until the time that he leaves the game. And it's never going to change.
Yeah. So definitely a testament to him. Glad to see it. Hopefully we see more. But definitely thanks to everybody who jumped on with us. Had a great time talking these sports. We would definitely be getting into all things NBA playoffs over these next couple of weeks. Arguably the best time of the year for me as a basketball guy. So having these big-time games, these big-time moments on these big-time stages is excellent. So we look forward to touching base with you guys. Have a great one, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Whole sports all plays. Yeah. Whole sports all plays.